Hi everyone, and thank you for tuning in to God-Sized Stories. This week I'm sharing my interview with Hollywood actor Eric Close. You will recognize him from several shows like Nashville and other really great shows that you've watched on TV before. We had a great time talking about just everything from our salvation experience to standing up as a man of faith in Hollywood to his brand new project, The Mulligan, which I have watched and is an amazing movie. It is going to be released in select theaters nationwide on April 18th and 19th. Well, whether you are sitting down with a cup of coffee, walking in the park, or stuck in traffic, get ready to be blessed by another God-sized story.
Are you from Israel or do you have?
No, the accent is from Brazil. I just a big supporter of Israel.
Yeah. Have you been to Israel?
Yes, I have been to Israel many years ago. Have you?
Not yet. It's on the radar for my wife and I to go. My wife's parents went several years ago, and all I can tell you is that whenever they would talk to us about it, so my wife, when they were in Israel, I believe my wife and I were in DiCarlo for a television festival. And when we would FaceTime with my in-laws, my wife's parents, whenever they would talk about the Holy Land, they would start to cry.
Oh yeah,
It moved them so much.
absolutely. Well, I think that here's the funny thing is that I went to Israel before I became a Christian. So
Wow.
yes, so I was in Brazil. I'm a speech therapist by trade, my degree from Brazil, and my last year at college, I had two patients who were Down syndrome, and their parents wanted to take them to Israel to do some surgeries that were only, Israel is very advanced in the medical field,
Yeah.
and I was the only student, was the year I graduated, who spoke English. So they were like, they needed somebody to go who knew medical terms, who knew, who could communicate with the medical team. And I mean, I'm 21 years old, had never left Brazil. I was already an English teacher, but like never gone outside of the country. And I was like, yes, let's go. It was the biggest adventure of my life. I had no money, they paid for everything. And one of the things that I remember is, we stayed in the new city of Jerusalem, okay, of course, and then we went to the old city of Jerusalem, and there are two or three entrances, I think, and we entered through King David's Gate, and there was like this aisle that you have all the merchants with really dark aisle. And so you go and go and go, and then all of a sudden at the end of the aisle, the city of Jerusalem opens up, and you see right there the Wailing Wall. And
Oh,
the weirdest thing, because I wasn't a believer at all, and I just started crying. There was just such an energy in that place. You can't explain it. It's just the city of God. We know, later. And I always say, like, I need to go back now that I'm a believer. I need to go back with absolutely different eyes, right, to see everything, because I was raised Catholic, so I knew of Jesus, but we did all the tours and stuff. But I would think that it would be absolutely different now. And
yeah. It's like you knew of Jesus. You believed that Jesus existed, but it wasn't personal yet. It wasn't a right. It wasn't that
yes,
personal
the,
relationship. It's different. You can know somebody
yes.
until you have that relationship and that friendship. It doesn't cross into that. It changes dramatically once that happens.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
I was raised at Catholic schools, and all my life. I went to Catholic university, so I knew all the rituals and things. And I even did the communion. You have to prepare to take communion. You do like a year of catechism, and
Catechism.
the catechism, yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I heard, I'm sure, but I had never heard that I had to repent of my sins and ask him to forgive me. And it's just yeah, life changing. I was 25 when it happened and turned my life
That's awesome.
upside down.
Yeah, I was close. I was about 23 years old, and it was the greatest change in my life. It's what you experienced when you came out and saw the Wailing Wall and that presence of God. That's what it was. You experienced the presence of God, which is, the world is so full of distraction, and our attention is so drawn to just the day to day, and like, okay, what am I doing, today, and what's my future, and that it's so easy for us not to really be in tune with. And even as a believer, that happens quite often.
Oh, absolutely.
We get and I was golfing with a really close friend of mine yesterday who has a real heart for Israel. He is my next door neighbor, and he's been to Israel 40 times. He has an apartment there. And we were talking yesterday about just listening and hearing God's voice. And I won't go into too much detail, but I told him years and years ago, I was about 23 years old, and I was driving down the freeway in Los Angeles about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was coming home from a play rehearsal. I was doing a play, and we would rehearse late at night. And I was heading home, and I was about 8 miles from my exit. So I would just drive in the fast lane and, had the top down on my old little rickety convertible car. And I heard this voice in my head, like my voice, but it said, get in the slow lane. And I went, why would I get in the slow lane? I've got 8 miles to go. And then I heard it even stronger, get in the slow lane. And I went, okay, Lord. And I drove 4 lanes over into the slow lane. And as I did that, a white station wagon was coming the other direction on the freeway in my lane with its headlights off. And I couldn't see it because the freeway curved. And there's no explanation other than God said to me, move over.
Absolutely.
And then we were I was telling him, I said, there's times in my life too where I haven't listened to that voice.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
God's going, Eric, listen to me. And I'm not listening. So, but that was one of those most very powerful, because it stuck with me to this day, that at that time in my life, God had a reason for me to move over and avoid that head-on collision. It doesn't always happen that way, clearly. I mean, we lose loved ones all the time, but anyway.
Right. Yeah, I think that I have a couple of stories of just God's grace lavishing you like that, and you realize later. And as a matter of fact, I tell this to my children often, that before I became to Christ, today, before I became a Christian, I realized so many times God has spared me, and there's no other explanation than the fact that he knew that I was coming. He had a plan for my life, and he was sparing me, protecting me from myself, even 25 years living in the fast lane.
Yeah.
Of course that I evidently had many times that I should have collided and died, and but God is so graceful and good.
Yes, and he knows our days and hours. My brother just passed away in December, and he was only 49. He was only 49, and yeah, but he loved Jesus, and that was his time. And while he was here, he made the best of every day that he had. And he actually called his cancer his blessed burden. Even though it was a burden, he used it as a blessing. And it wasn't easy. I mean, it was a challenge. So I think, like you were just saying, God had a plan. We're here right now, and hopefully he's honored by, the Mulligan, this movie.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. I actually, my husband and I just watched it yesterday. They sent me the link, the preview link, and we were crying at the end. It was like, my comment to him is like, how refreshing it is. And I am so blessed that I'm able to because of my relationship as a columnist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I'm able to see and talk to so many actors and actresses and directors who are making a difference in the world for Christ, and in an industry that is really not godly at all, in general. So it's so refreshing when you see, and that was one of the things about the Mulligan that I loved the most, was how clear the message of the gospel was throughout the movie, unapologetically. And I just commend you as an actor because I am sure it's not easy to take that kind of stand in Hollywood.
No, I haven't faced any sort of real, I want to say, backlash or, from being a man of faith. I look at that as God's protection, but also I think, I try my best to be, accepting and loving and not judgmental. I think that's where you run into trouble when you start pointing fingers at other people. And, the Hollywood industry has been wonderful for me. I mean, I felt 30 years ago, God called me into Hollywood to be an actor, to be the best actor I could be. Not all the characters I play are, Christians or followers of Christ. A lot of them are searching and are lost. That's life. I mean, we all have our challenges. And so I just thought God's like, wherever I send you, do the best job you can, and just try to be loving to the people around you. And, everybody's on a journey. Everybody has their own set of struggles.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, there's been some people that I don't even know that they believe in God, who've been really supportive of me when I was going through stuff with my brother, and,
Yes.
and so God's amazing. He uses situations in so many ways, but at the end, it all points back to him and points back to Jesus.
Yeah, and he called us to be light in the world, not to be separated from the world, right? So that's why I love the fact that you are standing out, because your behavior, of your beliefs, or how you live your life with your family. So that to me is being the light that Jesus called us to be in the world. So, but I wanted to my listeners, I want to just, I'm sure that everybody knows you. I have watched so many of your movies, the Hallmark movies. I love them. The Graceland, Wedding at Graceland, Home for the Holidays, all of those wonderful Hallmark movies. But just a little introduction. Eric Close is, he has been an actor for many, many years. You've seen him in the CBS mystery drama Without a Trace. I think it aired for 7 years, right? 2002.
We had seven seasons of Without a Trace.
Yes, that is a great drama. And then the musical more recently, Nashville, which was a pretty acclaimed drama as well. It was ABC musical drama. So awesome. And then he also started with in Clint Eastwood's American Sniper in 2014. I watched that one too. Great movie. I love any Clint Eastwood movie.
I know. Clint's movies are so good.
It is so good. You also are a director. You have also directed several movies. Legal Action is the latest one, I believe, an Amazon film, right?
That was actually I was the lead actor in Legal Action. Yeah, it was directed by Brent Christie for and so I did that, and ironically, I shot that in Toccoa, Georgia, where we shot the Mulligan, where we filmed the Mulligan, same town.
Oh, so, yeah. We thought you were in Toccoa. Our oldest daughter was, that was one of the colleges that she was going to play volleyball. There was the Toccoa Falls College. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. The part of the reason the Mulligan came about is when I was working in Toccoa on Legal Action, Rodney Eldridge was working on that movie, and he and I were playing golf together, and he said, my dad, Rick, is going to be eventually doing a golf movie called The Mulligan based on this book. And I said, oh, I know the author of that book, Wally Armstrong, is a friend of mine. And I said, well, hey, if it comes about, let me know. And 2 years later, they called me and they said, hey, we're ready to go. Do you want to do it? And the timing couldn't have been better. Was, we got set back a little bit because of the pandemic, about a year, but then we were able to get going. And it was one of my favorite experiences. A big majority of the crew were actually students from Liberty University. So I was working with all these juniors and seniors from Liberty University. The kids were awesome. And, I'm assuming that that one day they'll probably be hiring me.
Oh, so are they like students of the movie
Film
arts
students.
okay.
Yeah. And
That's
so they
amazing.
rotated while they were on set, they rotated from different departments. So they would work for a week in wardrobe, and then they would move into the sound department, whatever. But they were allowed kind of whatever their focus was to do the majority of that, but then they got to bounce around and experience a lot of different aspects of filmmaking.
That's amazing. And you worked side by side with the wonderful Pat Boone. So I am waiting to interview him as well.
Oh,
Tell me a
I
little bit
love
about
Booney.
that guy, isn't he? Boone?
Yeah, Booney. He is one of the finest gentlemen I've ever met in my life. He's very authentic. What you see is what you get. He's real. He's out there. He shares his heart. He has such a joy for life, a zest for life. He loves the Lord. He loves golf. We played golf together. He was, I think the time we played golf, he was 85 or 86, and
Wow.
he ran circles around me.
Wow.
It's amazing. Yeah.
How old is he now? Do you
I think
know?
he's 86. I think he's 86. I think he was
Okay,
85 when we played together. Yeah.
he is amazing. I can't wait to interview him. So it'll be
Oh, you'll
awesome.
love him.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about Paul McAllister, the lead role in the Mulligan.
You know, Paul's Paul's an interesting guy, but I think he's a guy that a lot of people can relate with. He's actually he is a man of integrity. He has a strong work ethic. He's honest. He's chosen not to drink because of his past. His father kind of went down a bad path of drinking and dishonesty. And so Paul kind of in his soul wants to prove that he's not that kind of guy. What Paul is struggling with is he has a pride issue and a lack of humbleness. Mm-hmm. And in his mind, he's also a workaholic. And so in his mind, his hard work, he thinks, well, I'm providing for my family. And I think a lot of people, especially, the provider of a family, when they're working really hard, they are providing for their family, but it can spill over into being a workaholic. Yeah, and then that leaves a lot of destruction. And so Paul's lacking balance in his life. Mm-hmm. And because of that, he's estranged from his son. He's separated from his wife. And they've been separated for about 5 years, but they haven't gotten divorced. And the son really resents the father, one, for what he believes his father abandoned the family for his work, but also on a deeper level, there's that father-son connection, but he also feels, he's defending his mom because he feels that, he abandoned mom. Mm-hmm. And so through the movie, while Paul's successful and what the world would think he's got it all, he really doesn't. And he's struggling with that. And he meets old pro played by Pat Boone, and through a series of encounters and through the game of golf and the life lessons that come through the game of golf, because the game of golf really mirrors life in so many ways, more than really any other sport. And old pro leads Paul back to the Lord and helps Paul gain new perspective and find that balance in his life. And it's a beautiful story of redemption, forgiveness, second chances, because a mulligan is a second chance.
Second chance, yes. I didn't know that. I'm not a golfer, and my husband is not a golfer. So I don't know a lot about golf, but so I never had heard that word. Of course, I ain't from around here either. So.
Yeah, yeah. So the mulligan is not part of the rules of golf. It's more of a grace thing. So if you're out playing with your friends and you hit a bad shot, your friends might say, "Hey, take a mulligan."
Right.
Now, but here's the interesting thing: when you're playing by the rules of golf, you can't take a mulligan, especially if you're in a tournament or anything. But what's cool about the game of golf is you can hit a great shot and end up in a bad situation, even if you hit a good shot. And the great thing about golf is you have another shot, you have another chance to make it right. So you'll see someone hit a terrible shot, and then the next shot they'll hit, it will go in the hole, and then suddenly so you go from these lows to these highs and these lows. It's life.
Life.
Yeah, yeah.
Or maybe I have to take up golfing.
Don't, it'll drive you crazy.
Well, so you are a father in real life as well. You have two daughters like me,
I
right?
am. Oh, you have two daughters?
I have two daughters too. Yes.
Awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
19 and 15. So mine are I'm still pretty much very involved in their lives.
Yeah.
But how did I think that you always are if you're a good parent, right?
Yeah.
How did the estrangement between like Paul and Jake in the movie, how did that sit with you when you first read the script? Did it resonate with you at all with your experiences?
Well, it's interesting. In my life, I think there was a period of time when I was a teenager where, I think every teenager, it's part of just your development. You want to push away from your parents. And the hard thing for a parent is not to hold on so tight, because it's kind of scary to let your teenagers go, especially when they start driving and maybe they're doing things that aren't exactly what you want them to do. So, I think there may have been a time in my life where I wasn't as close to my parents, because of choices I made. But now we're best friends. And it's the same with our daughters. They are our best friends. Like our older daughter just drove home last night from Portland to be here with us for the weekend. And I can't tell you how good that feels just to have them close. You want them to fly and go out and take on the world, but at the same time, it's wonderful when you have them home. But as far as, so look, I can understand the relationship between Jake and Paul. I mean, he loves his son. I think in Paul's arrogance, he thinks his son is mistaken. His son is wrong. He's putting the blame in the wrong place.
Right.
But he really loves his son, and his son really loves his dad. But they've gone in opposite directions because of Paul's pride. But that's what's so beautiful about the story. So look, I understand the love of a parent, and I understand that Paul loves his son, and I can also see where he's gone wrong in his life.
Yes.
We all do that. I mean, there have been times where I made work too important at times, because my job takes me away. So when I did Nashville, I lived away from home for 3 years. My family lived in California, and so I had to be really intentional about getting on a plane and flying home. But that takes its toll when your kids are young and they want their dad around. So I related to that. Yeah.
Yes, but you know what? It's all about being intentional, right? And I think that because we are all always going to be pulled in a direction that's away from your family, and you know what? Away from God, away from, I mean, all the top priorities in life, right? God, husband or wife, your children, parents. I mean, we are always going to have those distractions or those temptations even that will want to pull us away, but we have to be intentional and just choosing to take the time, right? And I think that that's one thing about the Mulligan that is an amazing message for this day and time. I actually just interviewed the Kendrick brothers about their newly released documentary. I don't know if you watched it yet. It's called Show Me the Father. And Yeah, and the theme, it's funny because the theme is also it's fatherhood, and there's this void in America right now of parents that are either, or dads who are either not there, or who are just not making children their priority. And I think that the Mulligan speaks loudly of that, and that a lot of the dads will be able to relate, and hopefully get the message that it's never too late to rekindle that relationship with the children, right?
It is never too late. I mean, I have friends that have been basically estranged from their fathers for various reasons their whole life. And even as their father is now, in certain cases, on their deathbed, sick, to pass away, they still long for the father relationship to be healed. And oftentimes it happens right at the end. And there's this almost this burden that's been lifted off the shoulder, even after decades of dysfunction and pain.
Absolutely.
Even at the moment, if there is a forgiveness and or redemption right there, even at the end, it can make up for years of the years that were lost. It's really just shows you how powerful that relationship is. And it's sad in our country. My dad told a friend of mine recently at when we were at my brother's celebration of life. This friend asked my dad, how is it your family is so close? Our name's close, but how we're so close? And my dad said, spend time together, spend time together. And my dad's a busy doctor, he was a surgeon, he was incredibly busy, but he found a way to always be at our sporting events and our plays and whatever else it was. He didn't get it right 100% of the time, but he was intentional, like you said,
Yes.
and I, for some, look, we live in this amazing country with so much opportunity, and you see that what you put into it, you get out of it quite often. I think where the balance has been lost is people think if you're working 100 hours a week, that's going to make your company more successful. And while that may be true, you're gonna be losing on so many other aspects of your life. And I think, let's say you take it 20 of those 100 hours and pour that into your relationship with your wife or your kids, try and find more of that balance. Oh, it makes such a difference. And then I think in the long run, it benefits your business or whatever else you're doing. And me personally, I really think that you got to start with God first, and then everything else gets much more attention than it would if you're putting more focus, if you start with your business first, or your wife first, or your kids first, or your friendships, or your physical fitness. If those things take priority, then all that other stuff, including God, they don't get everything, all of you.
Absolutely.
And,
yeah. And I say my husband and I would be married 22 years, and we talk about that it's like the secret of a good marriage is number one to me is that both of us seek God, because when you seek God, and that's the same for your relationship with children, with your parents. If you were diligently seeking God, in prayer and reading the word and sermons, or however it is, he's going to tell you when you're heading the wrong direction, and he's going to convict you, and he's going to encourage you, when your children are in trouble or whatever. The priorities, again, and I think the Mulligan speaks of priorities so loudly, and it makes those two big priorities in life: God, because Paul really, that was the turning point of his life, was his surrender to the Lord, God, and then your family. Just such a message, a true message of second chances. And one of my questions to you was that how does that message, that the Mulligan, taking a Mulligan, of second chances resonate with you? Is that was there any setback in your life that you had a chance to have a do-over, even spiritually speaking?
Yeah, I mean, they come in different forms or different ways. Sometimes it's simply just a choice that you've made, and then you think, so I would say on a bigger scale, I had mentioned, my teenage years. The first time I came to know Christ was when I was 13. So I was still very young. But that year was so pivotal in my life. It was just this incredible, amazing year. And then at 14, I got distracted with the world. I became a teenager, now as a teenager, and I was going off into the world and back to high school, and now into high school and then to college. But there was always this kind of emptiness in my soul, longing for that time when I was 13, when I had come to know the Lord. It just felt so right. So when I graduated from college, I remember there was just a moment I was sitting in my apartment, and I literally, all I said was, my prayer was, I don't know if you want to have anything to do with me, God, but I miss you. That's all I said.
I love that.
Yeah. And that's all I said. And God made it very clear that he missed me too. And that changed my life. And then, there's been times where, I haven't, or maybe I've gotten into a place in my career, because acting career is very unpredictable. So there are times where you have these lulls and you think, oh, am I ever going to work again? And you start to not trust.
Yeah.
And in those moments, God gives you a second chance and says, okay, are you going to trust me or are you not? So
Yeah.
You're right, I'm not trusting. Those little moments. And it's amazing when you really do surrender. I think a lot of what we're talking about, this, like what Paul's mentality of working so hard is, really, it's a lack of trust that God will provide. And a lot of times we're not comfortable with his level of provision. Mm-hmm. So we go, yeah, but God only says he's just going to provide a roof over our head and some food and, and shelter, that kind of thing. We want more than that. We want to be able to go to Hawaii, and we want to be able to do, and all those things are great, but you know what I mean? Really, really what we're doing is we're trying to control.
Yes, absolutely.
More in our life, and not trusting and saying, you know what? And so, for example, there have been times where I've passed on jobs that I know would have probably been pretty lucrative for me, but I wanted to be there for my kids and my wife. And that's a tough one, because you do wrestle with it. You wrestle and say, oh, is this a bad decision? And then I think making time for my wife and kids that they will look back on, and it will strengthen our bond and our relationship, is worth far more than that job, because I know God will honor that decision. And he says, just trust me. There's another job out there for you. It's okay.
It's just that grace, just listening to the Lord, and just listening to him, and following his lead every time.
And it's not easy all the time, but but the more you trust it, I feel the more you trust it, that it's like practice. You practice trust.
Yes.
And as those things happen, you start to go, okay, I believe it's true. Your promises.
Yes, exactly. That's true. That's very true. So somebody may be listening to this interview, Eric, who is feeling like that they are far away from God. They may not even know him, and their life is a mess. Maybe their family is a mess. And the Mulligan talks about a situation very similar to that, of a man who had lost himself in the pursuit of success in his career, and lost his family. But most of all, he lost himself. So what would you tell to that person today that maybe they know Jesus, and like you and your in college, you said, Lord, I miss you, and what you heard from him. So what would you say to that person who needs direction today, and he needs to take a mulligan?
Well, I would say that, first of all, God loves them. He created us. He made us.
Yes.
And so he loves us. And don't look to people, because people will fail you. That's one of the reasons a lot of times people fall away from faith, is they go, oh, look at that pastor or that person. including myself. I would hope that no one would look to me if I made, if I blew it and made some terrible mistake, that they would say, see, this whole following God and trusting God thing is ridiculous, is because we're human, we're fallible, we make mistakes. But what I would say is that God really does love them, and it's simple. And a lot of times people weren't raised in any kind of faith, or and also there are people out there who have lived a pretty good life. I mean, they would look and say, I have a good marriage, and I have a great family, and I have a nice job, and I don't lie and cheat and steal, and but there's still something missing. There's still something but there's still something missing. And there's a term, it's like this God hole. It's that place that God can only fill. And I just tell people, it's like, there's no formula other than, I think, to just say what I said and just say, God, I want to know you. I don't really get you, but I'm willing to try and understand you, and just say, Jesus, that these Christians believe you're real. So show me that you're real. I want to experience you. I want to understand what this hope that they have is. What is this hope that these people are willing to surrender their lives to and talk openly about? And sometimes, look at the disciples. I mean, they all scattered because of fear. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, all of them came back and literally were willing to die for their faith. Absolutely. Because the truth was revealed to them. And so I would just say, don't give up hope, and at some point, I think it's important, you can't go it alone, and try and find some people that you trust, that you can be around, that are kind of on that same journey, and you help each other along and support each other. Trying to go it alone is very, very difficult. And I think so there's strength in a solid core group of friends that you're like-minded, who will support you in your journey of faith,
That's a great advice. It's very, very good. And most of all, just again, the message of the movie, never forget that there's always a way back to the Father, right? Is that I love, there's a scene that Pat Boone says, oh, look at I think he says the lost son comes home or something, when after you have accepted Christ, and he comes and he sees you and says something like that, right? Like the lost son comes home or something. And that's exactly what the Father is waiting for, is for us to come home.
Absolutely. And one thing I missed, and that's so important, is I would tell people, if they don't have a Bible, they're free. You can go get a Bible. People love to give Bibles away.
Yes.
Get the Bible and start reading right at the beginning in Matthew, and just read it. And just say, okay, God, I may not understand all this, what you're saying here, but help me to understand it, and help it to be, help it to, impact my life. And I really believe, because that's God's word, and it hasn't changed. Sometimes people will tell you that, it's gets rewritten and changed, all that. God's bigger than that. But I would encourage people, like, go read it and see what everybody's reading about, and ask God to reveal himself through his word. That's really good.
It's very true. Well, what a pleasure to talk to Eric Close. The Mulligan, everyone, is going to release in theaters nationwide on April 19th and 20th of this year.
18 and 19 too, right?
18th and 19th is what I received. Yeah. So that's just around the corner. We're going to blink and it's going to be there. This interview is going to be airing closer to that release date as well. And so will my column for the Atlanta Journal. And tell me, where can the audience find out the movie information and anything they need to know?
So you want to go to the Mulligan Movie, so TheMulligan movie.com/theaters. TEATERS as in Sam. So you get the mulliganmovie.com/theaters, and that will give you can put in your zip code, and it'll tell you which theater in your area where the movie will be playing on April 18th and 19th. And it's going to be in over 1,000 theaters across the country. So that's really cool. And if it does well and the ticket sales do well, they may add a third night, which would be fantastic.
That would be great. It was such a pleasure to get to know you a little about the story behind the actor that I've enjoyed seeing so much. Love your movies, and thank you for making some family friendly movies for us to watch.
Yeah,
And
I hope to do more because I'm really proud of this movie, The Mulligan, and I think that I know, I don't think, I know that there's a hunger for these kind of movies. I've heard it from so many people that they just want more movies that they can sit down and feel comfortable watching as a family,
yes,
covering their kids' eyes, um, and you can tell. I mean, look, it's no secret. My favorite movie of all time is It's a Wonderful Life,
yeah.
and that movie covers is such an emotional roller coaster and such a beautiful story, that and there's nothing gratuitous in that movie, but it still makes you cry and laugh, and
Yes.
you feel for George Bailey and his family, and it covers the gamut of emotions, and yet you don't have to have all the swearing and all the other stuff. I
Yes.
mean, look, some movies I understand, or some stories that is important to tell that story.
Right.
I mean, look, if you read the Bible, you're going to read a lot of crazy stuff that's really, really hardcore.
Yeah.
And that's life. Life is that. I just think sometimes, I mean, you have to be careful. I don't know. I just think there's certain boundaries each person has to set.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. Because it's, the enemy loves for us to take our minds in places that it shouldn't be. We're only human. So I really applaud and everybody who's making an effort to make this type of entertainment for the families, that anybody can watch. Like you said, you can bring your 5-year-old and you don't have to close their eyes, at any
Yeah.
time during the movie. So that's really, really priceless right now. So I appreciate that very, very much. And we look forward to seeing you in more things. And it's so exciting to talk to you, get to know you and about your story. The name of my show is God-Sized Stories. And you definitely share the God-sized stories with us, all the wonderful things behind the man that we see on the screen and his family. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and hope to interview you another time again.
I would love that. And blessings on you and your family, your
Thanks.
husband, your daughters, and yeah, that would be great if we get the cross paths again.
I would love that. Well, Eric, it was nice meeting you, and blessings on your family as well and everything you do.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.